Another question is, only humans drink milk beyond childhood, so shouldn't we sort of wean off the stuff? No.
Hi everyone, hope you're doing well. I'm Seb. Thank you for clicking on this video, and today I want to quickly go over a video that I saw on YouTube of a monk who is talking about dairy milk and whether or not it's okay to consume it, especially as vegans. So before we get into it, as always, I would like to ask you to please subscribe and hit the notification button so you can stay up to date with these videos. And if you would like to follow me on other social media platforms, feel free to do that as well. I also want to share with you that my free ebook available in 20 languages is now available on my website. It's called When Animal Rights and Logic Meet, and it explains all the logical fallacies that non-vegans use in order to justify their exploitation of other animals. Now, before I start watching and commenting on this video, I want to say that I did watch it already, and although I disagree so much with a lot of points that the person is making, I am not attacking him. So from what I understand, his name is Sivarama Swami. There's a huge chance that I'm not pronouncing it right, but there's no way for me to find out how it's actually pronounced. And he follows the Krishna spiritual path, let's say. The reason why I want to make sure that everybody understands that I'm not attacking this person is because he's actually very respectful. He seems to be very reasonable, and he is actually worried about animal welfare. Traits that I didn't see people like Sadhguru have when he's talking about animal rights and what's happening to other animals. If you want to watch any of my videos on Sadhguru, you can check them out. Now, let's get back to this and start watching.
Really like to thank all of those who contributed to the topics of my earlier vlog about vegans consuming milk. Good to know that there are so many people dedicated to animal welfare. And before responding to some of the trending comments, let me just shine a little light on where I'm coming from. I'm a celibate monk from a 5,000-year-old Krishna tradition in which cows and humans have a symbiotic relationship.
Okay, just want to stop the video there and talk about what a symbiotic relationship is. A quick search on Google says that it is the intimate living together of two dissimilar organisms in a mutually beneficial relationship. We can't really say that this is a symbiotic relationship because yes, even though the cow is getting the benefit of being taken care by you, of being sheltered, fed, and everything provided by you, the reason why that cow is there is because they are being bred into existence so that people who consume their secretions can take advantage of them. And I know that this may sound a bit extreme, but it is a fact, you know. I can literally get someone to breed any human or animal and then say that, okay, I'm giving this and that, and I'm taking this and that, but it's okay because it's a symbiotic relationship, I'm taking care of them. It's not really the message of animal rights because it doesn't take into consideration why these cows are there in the first place. Now, I will get in a more specific detailed explanation in the rest of the video.
You could compare it to what dogs are to man today. Nature is full of these kinds of relationships.
Nature is full of these kinds of relationship, but in nature, it actually happens naturally. It doesn't happen because one species comes together and starts breeding another species into existence to take something from them. And even if that was the case, it is kind of a logical fallacy to refer to nature, called appeal to nature fallacy, to try to justify something that we are doing. Now, just because something happens in nature, it doesn't mean it's necessarily good or good enough for us to do as well. And of course, I'm not saying that the symbiotic relationship of other animals in nature is harmful, but in this case, when we live already in a world where animal is seen as resources, it definitely is harmful, in my opinion.
I've been living on farms and ashrams that care for cows and bulls for almost 40 years, so I have some experience. And in our tradition, the cow is considered like our mother, the bull is like our father, and milking is done by hand and animals are cared for life. Interestingly...
Okay, I mean, although I don't agree with the milking, I can obviously say that these places exist where cows and bulls are really taken care of, and I'm happy that they exist, but let's continue.
Interestingly, in Hungary, we've managed to pass a law in Parliament that makes our herd religious paraphernalia, and so it's protected as church property. And we also have permission for our own cow cemetery, which is quite a rare thing. As I mentioned before, I don't consume any dairy unless its source is compatible to what we have in Krishna Valley. Blood milk from the commercial industry, it's not for me. But I travel a lot. And ahimsa or cruelty-free milk, it's not widely available. so therefore mostly I'm dieting as a vegan. That's why I coined this term, veggie vegan.
Okay, so as I said in the beginning of this video, it is very, very obvious that he cares about the well-being of other animals, and it is very obvious that in their religion or spiritual path, they do care about these animals. And I really appreciate the fact that he's quite consistent with his stance. If he's traveling, he doesn't start coming up with excuses. No, he just doesn't consume milk. What he calls blood milk is the milk that comes from the industry, not the milk that people who have the same stance as him consume.
Considering that there are nearly 1/2 billion vegetarians worldwide, people who care about animals, shouldn't we be thinking about how our milk comes to us and how to disassociate ourselves from blood milk? Now let me touch on a few trending comments, and here come some questions. The first one is, do cows really produce more milk than calves require? My experience and the facts are yes. In a non-intensive dairy, a cow can give 25 liters, far more than the calf requires. The next question.
What he's saying is not wrong, but I don't appreciate the fact that he doesn't really give full context. The reason why this happens is not because by nature cows are species that just keep on producing milk. No, the reason why this happens is because cows are bred specifically in a way to make sure that the ones that are getting born are cows that produce a lot of milk, because that's how you make profit in the industry.
The next question is it true that cows produce milk due to being milked against their will? No, cows produce milk because that's what cows do. And
that's not really true. I mean, just want to correct him. Cows don't just produce milk. That's not what they do. They produce milk just like women when they give birth. And when someone gives birth, they produce milk so that the baby can drink the milk. Just because cows are producing a lot of milk doesn't mean that as a species, that's what they do, or even that that's what they are here for.
And they do it even after a calf is born, sometimes for years.
He says they do it even after a calf is born. That is how it works. Maybe he didn't explain himself well, but of course they're going to do it after the calf is born, because that's when the calf needs the milk. But I'm pretty sure that he didn't mean it that way. He meant that after the calf has grown to a certain age.
Years, if they're happy and unstressed. But
yeah, I mean, they can produce for years if they're happy and unstressed, but so can human mothers. And I have seen a lot of examples of 2 to 3 year old kids still breastfeeding from their mothers. Just because that is happening doesn't mean that we should start exploiting them for that milk. And don't get me wrong, exploiting doesn't necessarily involve cruelty. It's more the idea of seeing another being as a resource for you.
But a cow with a full udder that's not milk is in great discomfort, is in stress.
So yes, cows who have full udders are in great discomfort, but the problem here is not the fact that they have full udders, it's the fact that we are breeding them into existence in order to do that, and while we're doing that, they are in discomfort. So to milk them because they are in discomfort is like cutting the branches instead of taking the roots out of a tree. You're not really addressing the problem, which is breeding these cows into existence in order to consume their secretions.
For me, milk is a miracle food. You can't count its many byproducts. It contains primary vitamins and proteins, as is so many medically beneficial properties.
Milk can have some medically beneficial properties, and it does have vitamins and minerals, but so do whole plant foods, all right? So do grains, so do greens and veggies and fruits, and you can get all the nutrients that is available in milk from plant-based foods. Just because milk has some nutrients and vitamins that are good doesn't necessarily mean that it's made for us to consume. Other animals also need these nutrients, and that is why it has them. So it's not really an ideal food. It also has cholesterol, which is not good for the human health, especially if you have a high cholesterol, which may lead to heart disease, the #1 killer of human beings. However, obviously, if you drink it in moderation, even though you'd still be exploiting a cow, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have a heart attack out of nowhere.
Properties. Another question is, only humans drink milk beyond childhood, so shouldn't we sort of wean off the stuff? No. As we all know, humans are quite a different species. We do a lot of things animals don't do. We communicate on social media, for example. But
I think like this point is quite deceptive because he's basically saying, yeah, humans are the only animals who continue drinking breast milk after they're adults. But you know, humans also use cameras and phones and things like that. Like, that's not really the point. The point is that it is not natural for us to stop drinking the breast milk of our own mothers and start drinking the breast milk of another animal's mother. And someone can say, well, it is also not natural to use a smartphone. Yes, but you're not using them for the same reason. One is practicality, and the other one is, in your opinion, nutrition. And that nutrition can come from somewhere else.
But birds, cats, dogs, even snakes will drink milk whenever they can. And they're pretty connected to nature. Now here's the main question. Did we ask the cows if we could take their milk? Many of you have asked that. A child is born into a social setting without a choice and is raised according to parents' values without their asking babies their permission. But as long as social and family values and lifestyles are not abusive, as long as they result in healthy, productive young adults, the absence of a baby's initial consent is not a consideration. Humans...
Okay, so I kind of see where he's coming from, but I still have to disagree because to begin with, you would never do to human babies what we do to cows. And I'm not talking about milking them, of course. I'm talking about the idea of breeding them into existence to use them as resources. So if a human being does not have the emotional or mental or, let's say, intellectual capacity to give consent, then we can just take advantage of them and use them and then say, but we're taking care of them and it's not abusive. No, it doesn't matter if it's abusive or not, because it is wrong to use someone else as a resource, regardless of whether or not they can consent. In fact, if they cannot consent, that's even worse because you're taking advantage of the fact that they cannot consent.
Humans have a right to maintain and utilize dairy cows and working bulls, so long as they are not abused or slaughtered. And especially when cows and bulls display behavior, yes, they display behavior that shows their consent with the milk they give and the work they do.
So he's been quite honest and open about everything he shared. He gave examples, but he didn't really give any examples that cows display of how even cows display behavior of giving consent to being milked. And to be very honest, even if some kind of behavior was there, this behavior would only be there because of conditioning from being milked. All right, you can do that to basically most domesticated animals, get them to do something and then say, oh, look, they're giving consent. It's more conditioning than actual consent, because a cow out in nature would never, ever think about coming up to you and kind of trying to show you that, hey, please milk me, because that milk is not really for you.
For me, the bottom line for all of this debate is this. The world was created by design and by a designer. And it's the designer who determines what food is offenseless and what's forbidden. And the designer determined what kind of labor, including animal labor, is acceptable and what is not.
So, okay, I guess we're getting into religious parts here. A certain designer has to decide if it's okay to have animals do labor for us. I do not understand how you can even, you cannot prove that. And the responsibility of proof does lie on you when you are actually making another animal work for you, because you are not respecting the basic moral rights of that animal, such as the right to life, the right to freedom, the right to bodily autonomy, the right not to be used, and the right not to be exploited.
That's me and my spiritual tradition, and that's my conviction. Anyway, we may be vegetarians, vegans, lacto-vegetarians, whatever we may be. We don't have time to argue. We need to actually agree. We have to speak against and bring to an end to the historically unprecedented slaughter of animals that mankind is perpetuating against the most defenseless creatures on this earth. You think about it. Statistics. 60 billion farmed animals slaughtered every year. And that's not counting aquatics whose corpses are measured in the thousands of tons. That's a lot of bad karma. And someday, mankind will have to pay for that bad karma. May not be far away. Anyway, let me close here. If you have further questions, please send me a message and one of our team will get back to you. And if you'd like to see cow protection in action, visit an Ahimsa farm nearest to you. Or please consider my invitation to visit Krishna Valley for yourself.
Alright, so that is the end of the video. I do want to mention again that he seems quite a reasonable person, and it's very obvious that he is concerned about animal welfare, which I appreciate as well. Nowhere close to what Sadhguru is, or how he acts, or how he dismisses people who bring up the subject of animal rights. So I do really appreciate seeing someone who is actually compassionate. It is very obvious that his point and his stance when it comes to using cows and bulls does not come from a stance of not caring about them, does not come from a stance of seeing them as objects. It's more like a religious belief or conviction he has, as he mentioned. And although he's not really causing that much harm, especially compared to what actually happens to other animals, I think it's extremely dangerous to continue confirming the idea that the secretions of other animals are here for us to use, or even the idea that other animals are here for us to use, whether for food or labor or fashion or medical experiments, etc. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. I really appreciate your time. Please remember to subscribe and hit the notification button. And if you would like to support my work, check out my website sebalex.org or ethicsoverhabits.com for vegan, organic, and fair trade merchandise. Thank you again for watching. I'll see you in the next video.